My name's Quiana, as previously stated, and today I'm going to be talking about a crazy experience that I had over the summer, where a random person hacked into our Minecraft server and ended up giving us this amazing D&D experience. So, I was going to have a lot of audience participation in this, but I should have made this a 2-hour presentation, and I didn't. It's like a 40-minute presentation, and so if you're expecting a lot of like writing advice and workshopping, then you won't be getting that. It'll be mostly just like a big story with some writing things sprinkled in. So, let's begin. Because oh my goodness, I cannot believe that this story is real, and I have to emphasize again, like, this is a real story that happened to me over the summer. So, let's start out with some context. This is where I work, and it's a spaceship simulator. If you've been to a couple of my other panels, I've probably mentioned it a lot because it's amazing, it's fantastic. I adore it with every fiber of my being. And we basically send kids in here, and they get to experience a story. I get to sit in the back, like with a microphone, and I get to be the voice of the main computer and all the other characters they interact with. Sometimes I'm an actor on the bridge with them. It's really, really fun. But and there's no way to do this remotely, which shouldn't be a problem because there would never be any reason. Oh, well, so 2020 hit, and we we suddenly like couldn't work anymore. And the school we were at was really good about, like, they decided to continue to pay us even though we couldn't do any part of our job at all. But we had to find other things to do. And so a bunch of my work friends and I, like, we started a Minecraft server. And I hadn't played Minecraft in years, but it seemed like it was a really good time, and we just did all the normal things like mining and crafting and exploring the Nether. We were really excited for the Nether update to come out. Like, it was just a good time. So I want you to be introduced to all the people who were on this server. So first we have Alizon, who, and by the way, let me backtrack a little bit. So I didn't want to use the actual names or like images of any of the people involved in this story. But I did want to like have some sort of visual representation for them. So their names are just going to be like a name that I've assigned them, and for visuals, they're going to be portrayed by whoever they main in League of Legends, because we do that a lot. So anyway, Alizone, she like actually started the server. She was like also my boss and my maid of honor. She helped my husband and I, who is Septithar, get together faster than we would have otherwise. And so yeah, Septithar is my husband. Chris, who did a lot of like the technical stuff with the server, is married to Alizone, is also my boss at the Space Center place. Everyone here worked at the Space Center, I think. Okay, so then we have Yasuo. Now Yasuo doesn't actually play League of Legends, but if he did, I'm pretty sure that's who he'd main, so that's why I like put him in there as this character. And he was usually only there for like after school stuff, I guess. And I met him like 2 or 3 times, didn't know him that well. And then we had Oren, who started working there like pretty recently, but he's just like a really swell dude and one of the best actors and / voice actors I've ever met in my entire life. And just like a super solid guy, super solid friend. And we had Ekathos, who didn't technically like work at the at our Space Center, but he was involved in the Space Center community, because there are a bunch of different like space centers around Utah. If you're not from Utah, you should move here just for the space centers and the community that surrounds them. And Ekathos is very competent when it comes to just about everything. Like, if you think of a technical skill, Ekathos is probably good at it. And then we have SB, who is really excellent at programming and doing stuff, I guess. Like, he's just really, really smart and technically inclined, but he was usually playing League instead of Minecraft. So, and then there's me and my character, and all you need to know about me is that I'm very small. And, oh, there was also, and I forgot about him, but there was also Steve, who was the brother-in-law of Chris and Alizone, and he helped set up the server, and he often just like lurked in the background and watched and built these massive farms and accumulated tons of resources. So anyway, that's what these people are, I guess. So let's talk about the inciting incident. So we were like doing normal things. We had built a portal in like by our house, because Septithar and I had our house like by a lake, and it was really pretty. Loved it. And then we went to explore the Nether, and we came back and we found this by our portal. And this is obviously a dramatic recreation because I couldn't go back and find screenshots, but there was like this weird. It looked like this, and on the lectern there was a book. And so we opened it up, and there was this message from somebody called the Ice Wizard. And it was like, oh, thank you for freeing me. And it was also in that format. Like, I don't know if you can see like the text on the screen, but that was the format that it was in. Like all caps, underscores, really weird. It was like, thank you for freeing me. I've chosen you as my emissary. Super excited to do stuff with you. And so we were like, huh, that's cool. This is like a new Easter egg that they put into Minecraft. That's interesting. So I did some research online and discovered that it was not a Easter egg. Like, of course, there are no mentions of the Ice Wizard. I'm pretty sure just about everyone in this chat is familiar with Minecraft. There is no Ice Wizard who, like, sends you mysterious messages and invites you to go on quests if you venture into the Nether. So we kind of started to get, like, we were intrigued, but a little bit freaked out, because quests kept coming in through this book that was on that lectern. And they were, like, little things to go fetch things or go find people, or there would be like dungeons and stuff. And we found, and so we're like, is it someone on the server? Like, what's going on? But then there was this user named the Ice Wizard who popped up, who was like logging into things. And it was really strange because our server was a private server. And so the only way to get access was if your username specifically was whitelisted, and the Ice Wizard was not. And so Alizone was contacting all of us and being like, what's going on? Is it any of you guys? Like, who is getting access to the server without permission? Because not only did they have access to the server, but they very clearly had access to like creative mode and stuff, which like no one but the admin, not even she had actually. Like, actually, yeah, none of us had access to creative mode. So it was a little bit strange, and we were like, okay, let's figure out what's going on. And there, at one point, like, Yasuo went in, apparently, after everyone logged off, he had a conversation with the Ice Wizard, which totally cleared everything up. And that conversation is on the screen, word for word. You can read it if you'd like. We don't have a ton of time, but basically he was just like, oh yeah, I talked to him in private, and it turns out he's like a friend of a friend, and he's no one on the server, and he's totally trustworthy, and you should believe everything he says. So, obviously that was a little bit suspicious, and we're like, okay, so it's probably him. Like, that's a little bit sus. But then we're like, wait, but it could have been Ekathos because of some other weird things that he said. And maybe it was Orin because like it was, and all these suspects kept piling up. And we eventually were just really confused, but we knew two things. That we knew that it couldn't be Alizone, and we knew that it couldn't be Chris. First of all, because like Chris couldn't lie to save his life. Like he just couldn't. And Alizone couldn't like keep a secret. Also, we were able to like watch them interact with like not with the Ice Wizard, but with the Ice Wizard's characters while the Ice Wizard was doing things, if that makes any sense. So we were able to see it, and it was the equivalent of being in the same room at the same time as the Ice Wizard. So we know it wasn't them. I know it wasn't me or Septithar. But we like decided to keep going on. And I discovered some really interesting things about reality versus fantasy, especially when it comes to mystery stories, because this was the first real life mystery I'd ever experienced, right? And it turns out that mysteries in real life are so complicated. There was so much information, and there was enough evidence to pin any of the people that I flashed on screen as the Ice Wizard. But there was no way to give you all of that information without taking like 3 hours and also being really boring. And that's why in like fantasy stories or in mystery stories, a lot of the information is like condensed because there's just so much information that goes into mysteries. Anyway, we'll be talking more about that later. That's like my writing spiel is mysteries, I guess. So then crazy story stuff started happening. So most of the quests that the Ice Wizard gave us were like dedicated to stopping this person called the Lord of Fire, who had a bunch of followers that going to be resurrected, that were going to resurrect him or something. Like he was this old god person, and everything that we did was put in place to like stop him from coming back. But Yasuo got a hold of the ancient rituals and revived the Fire Wizard, we'll just call him the Fire Wizard, that's easy, who wanted to purify the world and make sure that everyone was perfect and, just classical big bad evil guy stuff. And the first thing the Fire Wizard did when he got reincarnated was try to recruit Orin and a bunch of other people. And Yasuo took like personal offense to this because he was the one who revived the Fire Lord, and so no one else was allowed to interact with characters that he had already interacted with. If he interacted with something, it was like his thing and no one else was allowed to touch it. So it was a little bit weird. At this point, Septithar was like the Ice Wizard's emissary. And the rest of us were kind of like his buddies who would tag along on adventures, and it was really fun. I didn't have a whole lot of like connection to either the Ice Wizard or the Fire Lord. I was I think I was the only person the Fire Lord didn't try to recruit because I was so annoying. And so he was like, "No, you're really obnoxious. I don't like your questions. You're the one person in the world I don't want on my team." And I was okay with that. But I also wasn't cool with the Ice Wizard because of some stuff that, like, his quest seemed kind of sketchy. At one point, we had to, like, eliminate an entire monastery full of monks, and that didn't sit well with me. So, basically, a lot of people, it got a lot more intense. The Fire Wizard got a lot more followers, and at one point, he showed up to Septithar's door, and he was like, well, I guess my door too, because we live in the same house. And he's like, he's like, "Hey, I want to meet you. I have talked to the new Leviathan, and I have had a change of heart, and I don't want to kill everyone anymore." And we didn't really believe him, but we thought, well, we'll go along with it, and discovered that the new Leviathan was Alizo, aka Leroy Jenkins. I saw you guys mention that in the chat. But yeah, and she was like, "Yes, I had a deep heart-to-heart conversation with the Fire Lord, and now he's on our side, and he's good. Also, the Ice Wizard is evil, and we should stop him." And we're like, "Oh, okay." So the Ice Wizard did a lot of things really well with this narrative. We found out later from him when all of this had ended that his intention was to keep the Fire Lord as the big bad evil guy, but he didn't. As soon as there were some narrative things that Alizan used to her advantage to totally shift it on his head, and he was willing to completely rework it while still maintaining the integrity of the story. But there were still some sketchy things that the Ice Wizard was doing, mainly that he was hacking into our server. He still had no access to the server, like no official access. And also, like, he didn't advocate for Yasuo to be kicked. That's not actually like a thing. I just kind of wish that Yasuo. Anyway, So a lot of other story stuff started happening, and the Fire Lord was convinced that the Ice Wizard was evil. He was super adamant about it. And I was like, listen, I don't think he's the best, but can you prove that we should like be fully on your side and not with the Ice Wizard? And so what the Fire Lord did is he sent us into this realm where the Ice Wizard appeared and started freaking out. He started like breaking down the portal to leave the realm, and we're like, hey, maybe you should not do that. And then he tried to murder all of us. And then while he was in, and he's like, you don't understand what you're doing. And then he transformed into a stronger, more powerful, dark version of himself called the Hunter. And then he tried to kill all of us. And then we turned in our 2 weeks notices as emissaries and buddies of the Ice Wizard. And it was very sad. And because like we had a connection with the Ice Wizard, and then he was like, we accidentally killed him and turned him into an evil monster. But throughout this all, the Ice Wizard, like the real life person who is behind all this story, started introducing different like elements to the story. Like everyone started being able to get powers. I was able to see conversations that people were having that other people in the server weren't able to see. And and everyone started to like uncover their lore. And it turned out that the Ice Lord and the Fire Lord were ancient gods, and there was all of this there was this whole pantheon that was returning, and it was really cool. But throughout all of this, even though everyone had their own lore and their own powers, it was really clear that there was one main character. Like there was one person whose choices had the biggest effect on the narrative, and that person was Alizon. So yeah, she was definitely the main character. Like her actions impacted the story more, like out of all of us. She was the one who like softened the heart of the Fire Lord and became, his Leviathan. Eventually the Fire Lord stepped down and she took his place as Fire Lord and had like an entire realm that she ruled. Like, she also got like endless favors from the Fire Lord. Also, it turned out that she was his granddaughter, and also that I was her sister, and also that Orin was our brother. So we were all grandkids of the original big bad evil guy who turned out to be just like this really lonely guy named Bernard with fire powers. But she was still very clearly the favorite like grandchild, and she got lots of favors from him, like ore, enchanted items, just random equipment, etc. And like I get really invested in stories. I get really invested in RPGs. And if you know how I personally felt about her getting all of this quote unquote like special treatment, I really liked it. I liked how fair and uneven the dynamic was, because to me it felt organic. Because when you start out and you like start playing a video game or you do a D&D campaign, usually like you are spoon-fed like protagonist juice, and you're just like the main character because you paid or you asked someone to give you like a main character experience. And so your actions are going to affect the bigger narrative, and the bigger narrative will kind of be pushed on you no matter what you do. But I liked that it wasn't the case here, and that the reason Alizon had this main character status was because of the choices that she made, and the way that she went like out of her way to impact the story and the different characters in the story. And that meant that any impact that I had also could change everything, because this was just a random stranger hacking into the server, right? This wasn't like one of our friends who's like picking favorites and like, I like this person more, so they're gonna get more of the stuff. Or like, I'm going to try to do this for this specific person. It was just a random guy who was bored during quarantine. And this whole experience felt so like natural and organic. It was awesome. It was epic. I loved it. It was incredible. And I had this whole spiel about chosen ones, but I'm going to sum it up really, really quickly because in all of our stories we have chosen ones. I don't care what story you're writing, you have a chosen one, and that's your protagonist. And there are the in-story reasons for why, like, stuff is happening to them, but then there's the out-of-story reasons, which is why, like, you as an author chose them. And they're being chosen, whether they think so or not, whether, like, your audience believes it or not. And we talk a lot about those who are chosen, but we rarely talk about those who do the choosing, and that will affect things drastically. And we'll see that a little bit more as this comes out. So I became so invested in this story, like so invested. Like I would stay up until like 4 a.m. every night, just pounding the Ice Wizard and his characters with questions and figuring out the narrative and trying to find solutions to all the problems that had been presented that like wouldn't hurt anybody. Because I loved all of the characters, even the ones that I was in opposition with, or supposed to be in opposition with. Evil Ice Wizard, the hunter, like who was also the brother of the Fire Lord. So we had like a Megatron Optimus Prime thing going on there. Like it was a great brotherly rivalry. So he was like my crazy uncle, and we became best friends and went on lots of adventures together. But that was after he tried to kill me 2 or 3 times. It was a good time. Like we just it was my life, and I felt like a protagonist of even though I still wasn't, like Alizon was still like the main character for the most part, but the choices that I made in the narrative mattered, and it was such an organic and real experience. And I was able to learn so much about stories and like what protagonists would actually be experiencing if they'd go through things like that, because I genuinely wasn't expecting anything crazy like this to happen when I first started pulling up Minecraft. And it was just a good time. One weird thing though, everyone had really cool backstories and unique weapons. Whether they chose to engage in the story or not, that was up to them. But everyone had cool backstories and a divine lineage where they got their powers from. Except for Chris, I remember his like legendary weapon, while the rest of us got in these incredible like modded weapons, he got a literal like fish. And his divine parent just kind of hated him. So Alizon was being given a lot of like. Anyway, that's just something weird that happened, because I was like, I think the Ice Wizard is either really good friends with Chris in real life, or he really hates him because of what was going on. And that was just kind of like weird. But then stuff started to change. And so basically, so you remember how I mentioned how like Alizon had all of that special treatment, I guess, and a lot of that special treatment came in the form of like in-game equipment and ore and whatever. And I was fine, but at this point I was not playing it for Minecraft anymore. I was playing it to try to end a war between my 2 uncles, right? But Yasuo was not pleased with this, because he had signed up for a vanilla Minecraft experience, and he was furious that Alizon had all this special treatment, and it got to the point where he just kind of exploded and was yelling at everyone on the server. Someone had stolen his stuff or something. I don't remember the details. He was really mad. He like got angry at the Ice Wizard specifically, and like was furious at him and all the things that the Ice Wizard was doing, and accused him of picking favorites, which like wasn't the case, right? Like she was just engaging in the story more, and that was the natural consequences of her actions. But it was really miserable. And so what the Ice Wizard did was actually really smart. He was like, all right, so there's this quest we need to go on back in time. So here's this portal that leads back in time, but it was like led hundreds of thousands of blocks away. And essentially how it was, if you want to engage in story, then you'd go back in time to engage with like the stuff that was going on there. And anything was fair game there. But if you didn't want that, if you wanted just the normal vanilla Minecraft experience, then you stayed in the present and none of the items transferred over. I don't know how we did it. Also, it was super fun because we never knew what kinds of mods or data packs the Ice Wizard was going to install into our server. It was crazy, literally waking up with superpowers and having no idea how to use them and maneuvering that. It was great. But anyway, after that experience was really rough. It was the first time I talked to the Ice Wizard out of character. I was really, and the story, it was still good after that, but it wasn't the same. Yeah, and I had this whole thing about power, but we'll just kind of skip over that. But yeah, there was still this, there was all this story stuff happening, right? But there was still that true underlying mystery of who the Ice Wizard was. And we had no clue. We had all of these theories, and our closest guess was that it would, because he seemed to be connected to the space in our world somehow, was that he was a guy named Logan who had written missions at one point, and we thought it was him anyway. But anyway, because we're talking about mystery, we're going to talk about mystery now. I'm not stalling telling you the true identity of the Ice Wizard at all. Anyway, so the thing I really liked about everything that Ice Wizard presented with us is he gave us all a chance, right? And in mysteries, I think it's really important to give your audience the chance, and because people like figuring it out with the audience, and it's important to provide the solution in your stories. And I think the thing that I learned from this experience with the Ice Wizard is sometimes the most obvious solution is the correct one. And we'll get to that later. But I think that, but if you're writing your own mystery, I think it's good to remember that no one would ever twist the rules of reality just to make their main character look cool, and they would never ever hide special information from the audience just so the main character could figure it out, and they would never ever provide a sprawling mystery and never give the audience an opportunity to figure out, and then make fun of the audience for trying to figure it out. And they would absolutely never give you a random conclusion that had no build up, no setup at all, and no one would ever do that. No one would ever do that. So if you want good, satisfying mysteries, I've thrown some up here on the screen. Now that I'm going through this presentation, I don't know why it turned from video games into here all my personal bones to pick with Sherlock, but I guess that's what I did. But anyway, the reason why I went through all of that, although that stuff with mysteries, is because I've made promises to you throughout this story, and I had to tell this story, and I had to tell its ending as well. And this is a hard ending to tell because it's real. If I was an author, I would have tweaked it and made the ending be a little bit different than it actually was. But it happened, and I have to tell you how it ended. So here we go. Here's what we knew about the Ice Wizard. The Ice Wizard could gain access to the server at any time. The Ice Wizard worked at a space center at some point, and the Ice Wizard was also a good storyteller, and this is all we knew about him. And at one point, and here's the thing, I didn't actually want to know who the Ice Wizard was. I kind of thought, I did after everything was all done, right? So it became all the more devastating when I actually like discovered who it was. So here's how it went down. So it was me and Septithar and Alizone and Chris, and this was when you could meet in like small groups of people, and we were all ice wizarding at one of our houses. And Chris has this like really like janky laptops, like, you know, the laptops where you can like if you unplug it, the entire thing dies. Like, he had one of those. And he was doing something, and I was doing something. Everyone was online. The Ice Wizard had a cool story point, and and Septithar, looked down and he noticed that the Ice Wizard and Chris had logged off at exactly the same time. And he looked over and saw that Alizone had tripped over the wire to Chris's computer. And we were just kind of like, and he just kind of sat back as he absorbed this, and he was like, wait, this could just be a coincidence. I'm not going to get super invested here. But then they started laughing, like uncontrollably laughing. And then I turned and I was like, hey, what's going on? And they said, and Alizone like just kind of like threw like, it was like tearful laughing, and she said, yeah, Chris is the Ice Wizard. And this like blew my mind. I was just really shaken by that. And because remember, the thing I loved so much about the story that had been going on for months, by the way, like months and months and months of me just like that entire lockdown, that the entire summer before school started, I loved it because I thought it was like an organic experience that some random stranger had provided us with. I loved it because it wasn't fake. And then I remembered who the main character was, and everything started to click. So I was like, wait, the Ice Wizard was biased the entire time. Like, you can't hack into a Minecraft server that you're not whitelisted in. They doctored screenshots. They just had access the entire time. Oh. And I, like I said before, really I was just like, oh, like it was the most obvious solution, right? We should have seen it in front of us like the entire time. Like, Chris is good at all of those things. His job, is my boss at a space center where we provide spontaneous stories through technology to children. Like, it could not have been any more obvious. And I was really I was like almost mad, partially because I thought it was going to I thought it's never going to be the same again. But also because like I thought it was real and it wasn't. It had been like I thought that I had been being spoon-fed the protagonist juice, and I had drunk it up like nothing else. And it but you know what? The more that I thought about this, the more I realized, you know what? That was okay. That was fine, actually. Um because the important thing was not that like it was real or it was fake, because I'm assuming that a lot of us here are writers or storytellers of some kind, right? And no matter what you create, it is going to be fake. There are going to be biases that are in your stories. You're going to be twisting and tweaking things. It will never be like real. But that's not the point. The point was that I learned so much about myself, and I got to engage in a story that felt authentic and genuine to me. And that's what your job is as writers and storytellers, is not to create something, is not to imitate reality, because we're in reality all the time. And it kind of sucks. That's why we have fantasy and video games and all this crazy stuff. Is not to be real, like, but to help us deal with reality better. And the Ice Wizard did that perfectly, like so well. Yeah, and I came to be a lot more like at peace with that. And yeah, that's like how it ends. I know and I'm satisfied with it. I'm happy with how it ended because of everything that I learned. And this presentation should have been 2 hours long because I wanted to go over every single thing that the Ice Wizard did. I wanted to like pick apart the story things that he did, how he responded to players doing certain things, how he kept the secrets. If you want, I wanted to go over all of that, but because I learned so much as a person. Now, am I suggesting that you start a Minecraft server from your friends and then pretend to be a hacker and provide them with a crazy story so they get this wacky experience? Actually, yes. Please do that. I want to see this happen more often. It was the best thing that's ever happened to, well, not the best thing. Like getting married to my husband was probably the best thing. But it's like, it was the best story thing that's ever happened to me. So, with that being said, do we have any? I'm opening up to questions. I'm sorry I couldn't interact with the Discord as much as I wanted to, but I'll go through and try to answer as many questions as I can.
Thank you. That was fantastic. So, Mason Wheeler asked, you mentioned real-life mysteries and was curious if you've read The Cuckoo's Egg. It's a real story about tracking down a computer cracker, but much less benevolent.
I have not read that, actually, but it sounds really interesting. Yeah. Are there any other questions?
So, how would you deal with if you were deciding to be the Ice Wizard? How would you deal with interpersonal conflicts like what you experienced with your rogue friend?
I think the first thing that I do is make sure that I knew everyone in the server beforehand and that I know like um how they'd respond to role-playing situations beforehand. Because one of the big problems with Yasuo was that we didn't know him that well. And we'd also had like a little bit of problems with him at work too, where these like little red flags that would come up occasionally. I went through and read like all of our Discord chats. And there were just like little red flags everywhere. And I was like, how did we miss all these? Why did we invite them to the server? But we were trying to be like inclusive and whatever. Which is important to a point. But if you're doing something like this, you need to know who you're working with, and you need to know that this is something that they'll latch onto and really enjoy. So make sure that the people you have in your server are people who like story things and like aren't completely in it for just for the game and the loot gathering.
Oh, there we go. So Jay Gosling asks, what do you do when the jig is up? What if Chris had lots more story he had ready to go? How does someone get over that or use what didn't get used somehow?
Well, the story did continue onward, actually. Like it kept going, and in fact, he opened up another server, and we kind of got to be admins. Not quite admins, but we got to be involved in the storytelling for that server. And so what he did is he started up a new server, and he invited all his friends, and they were aware that he was the one in charge. So some of the magic and mystery was gone, but it was still really fun. And people still got to be involved in it, and there wasn't any of that fun like hacker mystery, but it was still a good time, and I still got to get a lot of closure on the arcs and the relationships that I had formed throughout the story.
So another question is, how did the post reveal fallout kind of go? Did that change the relationship with Chris, realizing that he had been kind of deceptive for quite a while with you?
So we actually it didn't change my relationship with Chris at all, but I was kind of mad at Alizon for telling me. I was kind of mad, but eventually it was all right. Also, the reason he had initially done it is because when my husband and I were dating, we pranked them on April Fool's Day, and we've been dating for like 2 weeks at that point, and we pranked them and told them that we were engaged and like we had like a fake ring and everything, and he was shook by that. And like it was his way of getting back at us. So like, and it just kind of exploded into something a lot bigger than he intended. So I got it. I understood, and it was okay, and we're still like all really really good friends. So except for Yasuo, disclaimer, we're not friends with Yasuo. Sorry, Yasuo.
Fair enough. So turnabout is fair play. Kingster asks, did Chris explain what things were like from his point of view, and what was that like?
He did. We had like a big like 3-hour talk where he just went over what things were like from his perspective, and we learned about all of the like the weird technical errors that happened, and we were convinced were actually story things, and he was like, yeah, it's a story thing. And there was this one character who was like the wife of the Fire Lord who everyone thought was dead, and he was going to bring her back, and she was going to be like a good person. But the more we interacted with her, we're like, wait, you're like not a good person. Why did you leave and not tell anyone? And he developed her into a very sinister character. In fact, one of the most terrifying villains I've ever encountered. And he was like, there were times, because what he did is he had opened 2 instances of Minecraft, and he would just make sure that when we were watching, he just had his player character screen up. And then we were gone, he'd minimize it and, you know, do Ice Wizard things. There were even times when we were convinced that we were like tricking the Ice Wizard, because poor Chris kept getting manipulated. Like, I spent so much time like convincing Chris during the Ice Wizard thing, like, look, listen, this character is manipulating you. They don't have your best interests at heart. Don't listen to them. And he's like, I don't know. I just really trust him in the entire. But yeah, it was a good time. He had a lot of fun with it. I don't know if that answered your question, but there you go.
Jay Gosling asks, what are your favorite mystery books or movies we could learn from? What about real-life mysteries we should learn about?
Okay, so book mysteries. Honestly, Agatha Christie is awesome with her mysteries, because she always provides the reader with the same information that the like main character has without overloading you with information. Of course, like basically anything Brandon Sanderson writes, even though they're not technically mysteries, if you read one of his books, you get to the end and you're like, your mind is blown, and then go back and read it again and notice where he like puts different things and notices how he misleads you. It's really great. What real life mysteries we should learn about? Let's see. Like I said before, this was my first example, my first chance to actually interact with a real life mystery. Because like all the other mysteries I've found that are real life mysteries often have to do with murders, and I find that really depressing because it's a little bit close to home for me, because a bunch of my close friends, there was a very famous murder that happened in their family, and so it's a little bit close to home, and I don't study them as much. So, yeah.
Fair enough. Ian Hydra Goodwin asks, what made the story so compelling to you?
I think so. If I'm going to be like completely honest, if I took everything that happened in that story, in the Ice Wizard story, and I wrote it down exactly how it happened and put it in a book and then shipped it out to you, it would not be like, you wouldn't find anything super fantastic about it. But it was fantastic to me because my choices in the narrative mattered. And because I never knew what was going to happen next, but whatever happened next was always an inevitable result of things that had already been established or things that other characters did. And just because of how immersive that was, and also because of the fact that I didn't know who was doing it, this was a genuine, spontaneous experience. Like, that's what made it so powerful and special to me. And so
So,
I'm going through the chat, and it's really fun.
Wolvred asks, if you were going to be the Ice Wizard, how would you go about it?
That's a really good question. I think I would have done things in a really similar fashion. The only difference, and this is a big difference between like the storytelling styles of me and Chris, because like Chris usually has very black and white, like good guy, bad guy things, and the only reason it changed up during the narrative is because I was looking for it and I was convinced that, there was something deeper going on, and he just ran with it because his goal was to make a good story, right? And he was like, oh, this player wants a more complex story with more complex characters. That's what I'll provide. And that's just like a personal preference for me. And I think I would also have put off revealing my identity or letting my spouse reveal my identity until like the very end, when all the story was closed up and there was going to be like and have like a party where the Ice Wizard was going to show up and have answer like all the questions. And to be fair, that is what Chris initially wanted. So I really wouldn't have done things a whole lot differently, except for, and the caveat, making sure that the people in the server were all people that I knew and trusted to not get angsty and bitter over little things.